Greetings, this is Griff Ruby with Part 8 on my series, Sedevacantism, the Catholic Perspective. Well, what about the Mass? It does seem of late that somehow the Mass doesn't seem to be quite the issue it was in bygone days. I realize that the famous Motu Proprio 2007 may have something to do with that. Thanks to that, the Catholic Mass did see a somewhat broader dissemination, toleration, whatever you want to call it, within the fallen Vatican organization. It didn't really change as much as one might have hoped, but that's the way it went. So, but is the Mass important? Oh, absolutely. And let me tell you why. Because the Mass is the one place where the life of the church, as a church, not just somebody by themselves or with their little family group, but as a church, as the community, with their neighbors and friends and whoever else comprise the church, you see, acts as a church and does so on a regular basis. Apart from those who are geographically remote, that they can't get to a parish on any frequent basis, you should be able to go to, a Catholic Mass. Ideally once a week. In our present circumstances, for my own, we try to make it about once a month because we have no Catholic Mass. The Mass is close enough. So the reason for that Mass is it is like a sign of unity. I think even Ratzinger said something along that line at one point, that the Mass would be a sign of unity. And he's right about that. I have to give him that. He was right about that. It is. The traditional Mass is the sign of unity. By adhering to the traditional Mass, as a priest saying the traditional Mass, hopefully exclusively, as an individual parishioner going only to venues where the traditional Mass is said, and the same as a religious, as a bishop, also doing the traditional Mass, doing all the traditional sacraments, and only ordaining priests by the traditional forms for the traditional church. All these things, you see, by that you have signed up to saying, I am a Catholic. That doesn't mean everybody who says the traditional Mass is a Catholic. I mean, we've got the Greek schismatics who deny the papacy, who deny the Immaculate Conception, who deny that the Holy Ghost proceeds from the Son. These are heresies, So even though they may have valid sacraments among them, well, they do, you see, they're not, and have very nice Masses, their theology is different. And the same goes for some old communities of old Catholics, again, And it even goes for some individuals you're going to find in any traditional Catholic venue. I remember once going to a very big indult Mass in England, but while waiting for it, I was chatting with a lady and who was telling me, she loved the old liturgy. That's why she was going to go. We were waiting for it to start. But she had no interest in living a Catholic life, and said as much. But that's one example. I'm sure that doesn't speak for the whole room of probably at least maybe close on 1,000 people. I know it certainly didn't speak for me and my wife who went, and I don't think it speaks for a lot of people, but there's some who did. So, but by doing the Mass, and especially now in this time, one is signing up to saying, I'm claiming to be a Catholic. By doing a Novus Ordo, you see, that's as good as saying, I'm not a Catholic. That's what the Novus Ordo really is about. That's why they changed. You have a change of belief. And that change of belief is what drove them to have a changed law of prayer. Hence the new Mass. Hence the liturgical destruction after King Henry VIII. Again, once the Anglican Church was created, they vernacularized. They rewrote their theology. They started having all the liturgical stuff very similar to what the Novus Ordo has today. So much so, and Michael Davies, wrote a very good book about that, Cranmer's Godly Order. Very interesting comparisons between the two. Why? Because they had a different law of belief, and to commemorate that different law of belief, they instituted a different law of prayer. The Vatican organization has a different law of belief from the historic beliefs of Catholics, and to commemorate that different belief, they instituted the same abuses pretty much, plus some others drawn from the Lutherans and so forth, and to create their Novus Ordo. It's the same thing. It commemorates a different system of beliefs. It is a way of saying that one is not a Catholic, and at least no longer visibly. Like again, some folks in a Novus Ordo might still be Catholic at heart. God will have to judge the individual case. But visibly, by doing the Novus Ordo, they are in that moment demonstrating themselves to be outside the visible union of the church. So that's why the Mass is so important. I mean, the other sacraments you get once or twice in a lifetime. You can make a pilgrimage out of it. You want to get your children confirmed. You may have to drive, travel, walk, whatever, ride a bus, and go 1,000 miles to find the only bishop available to do it. But you do it, you see, and you're done. But the Mass you need on a regular basis. The Mass impacts our lives. The Mass is what showed to all the communities of individual Catholics all around the world, hey, your local parish has just decided they're not going to be Catholic anymore. The new ceremony that they see every single week draws attention to that fact. Now, this has nothing to do with Eastern rites. I realize there are different liturgical traditions that are ancient and authentic. So just bear that in mind too. But the Novus Ordo is not ancient liturgies. It's something somebody made up. We have the Tridentine Mass, the Latin Mass. We have the various alternate, the Byzantine and other Mozarabic, other alternate rites that have historically existed from apostolic times. They're like different Gospels in the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Novus Ordo is like, well, let's, do you remember a story by Irving Wallace called The Word, about a fake Gospel of James that was being concocted? The Novus Ordo is like that. The book may even be an attempt to illustrate that. And that's what it is. It's somebody sits down and decides to write their own gospel. That's what the Novus Ordo is. It has no historic authenticity. It is in fact invented by people whose hatred of God is a documented fact. So that is why the true Mass is so important. Thank you.